software set up for live streaming. I don't know what I changed, but I've been battling that. This is happiness. What is happiness? What does it look like? I'm Jeff Kreh. I'm your humanities tutor, and my goal is to help you discover the joy of learning and learning how to be independent and effective in your learning. The idea of happiness is one that I started studying several years ago as part of my studies out of Faulkner University in the great books, this great series of books behind me. And these are a lot of old things on happiness. Now, I do quite a bit of reading on new things, and every day I get up and I read through something or look for something on my Facebook feed or on my Google feed or on something about some new cutting edge thing that's happening. And the one that came through this morning was Harvard developed AI identifies the shortest path to human happiness. And I'm like, well, human happiness, what other kind of happiness is there? They're working this group, Deep Longevity, working with Nancy Etkoff, a PhD with Harvard Medical School, and also an authority on happiness and beauty. And so the happiness tie-in there caught my attention. And just very briefly, what they are doing is they're trying to develop an AI, an artificial intelligence, to help people overcome the deleterious effects of, well, loneliness is bad, and there's been a lot of that over the last 2 years, especially with everything we've experienced with lockdowns. But what's much, 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 much worse is not just loneliness, but social isolation. Being involved in prison mission work for years and years, social isolation is something that I dealt with and helped others process through. The education process helped a lot of people process through that. But this is something different. They are wanting to build a technological solution to the lack of human interaction. They're wanting to build an artificially intelligent psychologist, like a clinical psychologist like Jordan Peterson, but a less emotionally or politically charged version that is artificial intelligence. So dealing with the problem of a lack of human interaction through the development of an artificial intelligence. That's where they're headed. Anyway, they look at several different things. They develop two different models that they work with. The first one, you answer some questions and it predicts how old you are and what your psychological well-being will be in 10 years, so your happiness. And it says it depicts the trajectories of the human mind as it ages. Well, mind is an idea. Mind is something that, it's not brain. So the brain ages, but the mind, hopefully the mind matures. And that comes about not from chronological age or from aging or years passing, but that's the value of the experiences that we're having and the questions that we're asking, the things we're learning, and all of our interactions. So that struck me as a little weird. They're also demonstrating the capacity to form meaningful connections, so that's important to mental health, meaningful connections. And we were created for relationships, so that makes sense. As well as mental autonomy, the idea of, I don't need you to tell me everything, I just need to think and have the autonomy of thought, have the freedom of thought, the freedom of speech, the freedom to think and to speak and to pursue knowledge. And then the last one, environmental mastery, that being my garden and it being free of weeds, or my room being picked up and put away, things of that nature. So they're able to predict that based on answering some survey questions of where you'll be in 10 years. This part hurt my feelings. It said, it also suggests that the emphasis on personal progress is constantly declining, but the sense of having a purpose in life only fades after 40 to 50 years. And here I am, just recently turned 50, so I guess my purpose is going to be fading from now on. These results add to the growing body of knowledge on socio-emotional selectivity and hedonic adaptation in the context of adult personality development. Hedonic adaptation. Hedonic, hedonist, hedonism. This is the idea of pursuing pleasure and The ancients warned us of the pursuit of pleasure. Pleasure for pleasure's sake leads to being enslaved to the passions, Aristotle might say. And this idea of, when we think about happiness in the West anyway, and in the U.S., life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, well, a pursuit of happiness that leads to an enslavement to your own passions, like an addict to the next emotional or physical high, that cannot be pursuing happiness in the most meaningful way. And so they have some interesting things that they're doing here with this study. They're looking for the shortest path to human happiness. So we have to ask, what is happiness? They don't address that. What is happiness? And Aristotle, back in his book Nicomachean Ethics, in the book 1 of that, the very beginning idea is that humans make the decisions they make, that we pursue the things that we pursue, seeking for the highest aim, and that the highest aim, the highest achievement is happiness. In other words, if you do this, you're doing this because it makes you happy, or because it leads to something that makes you happy, or because that leads to something that makes you happy. But just being happy isn't enough. We are looking for a happiness that transcends all being happy and all happiness pursuits. And so the pursuit of happiness then is not something that necessarily makes you happy, because to be pursuing it is to not have achieved it. And if you're happy not having achieved something, then you have really developed some maturity that you can be happy in the pursuit. For Aristotle, it's happiness in the highest. It's called eudaimonia, Eudomina, or something like that in the Greek. And this is an eternal state. This is like a Platonic form. This is a perfect existence of happiness. And that's what he says humans are aiming at. Now, we have different definitions of what true, full, eternal happiness is, and that's going to limit or expand our opportunities while we're here on earth and the things that we're pursuing. So the founding generation is descendant from people who were seeking happiness by escaping the economic oppression of Europe. They were escaping the political oppression of Europe. They were escaping the religious oppression of Europe. And they came into this new world, and when it came time to set up a country for themselves with the Declaration of Independence, which happened today, way back then, they had already decided to be independent. That happened on July 2nd. They've been working out the language of how they're going to communicate that through Jefferson's great masterpiece, the Declaration of Independence, on July 4th. And one thing that as Jefferson was preparing the Declaration for the committee that John Adams was the head of, and that Benjamin Franklin was very active in, is he's preparing his study in that, this idea of happiness gripped him. This is different than what predecessors writing about life, liberty, and the pursuit of, or life, liberty, and property, the ability to own things. This is deeper. And Jefferson chooses the word happiness here, in the pursuit of happiness, not just being happy, but the pursuit of a worthwhile happiness, as the foundation framework for this new country that several of them had been envisioning in the 1700s. This eternal happiness, that's what Jefferson has in mind. Not hedonic pleasure, because that leads to slavery. That leads to slavery to one's own passions. But this higher transcendent idea of happiness. So for the majority of the founding generation, where would they have found a definition for what it looks like to pursue eternally meaningful happiness? Well, the highest ideal of a human is Jesus Christ, fully actualized in every way, more so than any other literary figure, historical figure, philosophical figure. He is the whatever is greater than gold standard. He's the God standard of human achievement. And so, why did he decide what he did? What drove him? Was it this idea of happiness? And so we look at his love for God and God's will for him to do the things that he did, and following after that was in pursuit of something. He wasn't doing that so that God would love him. He was doing that because he loved God, and pursuing a happy and eternally happy relationship with God. and God's love for humans. And so Jesus is motivated by God's love for humans and wanting them to have an eternally happy relationship with God. That's what's driving. We think of what is the embodiment. It's not selfish to pursue happiness. It's also not selfless to pursue happiness. It's an actualization of self. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. These fruits of the Spirit that against such there is no law against love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is a human inclination not to fully actualize those things if we think that happiness is pleasure. And so Jesus shows us the way on this to eternal happiness. And the founding generation would have seen eudaimonia. They would have seen joy. They would have seen an eternally happy relationship with God as the only worthwhile pursuit. The only reason why life is meaningful is if we have the liberty to make choices and to choose, like they did in the Garden of Eden, to accept or reject God's definition of what it means to be an eternally happy human. Life only means anything with liberty, and liberty only has value if it's pursuing the highest goal, eternal happiness. So when you see life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, don't think about the person who is making immature choices and hurting themselves in the pursuit of the next great high, whether that's an emotional high or a physical high or whatever it is. That's not happiness. And if you've ever chased after that and you wake up day after day having to go higher and higher, you know how empty that is, and you're just driving off a cliff in the pursuit of pleasure. And if you think that's what the founding fathers sacrificed so much to construct a structure wherein people could destroy themselves by pursuing pleasure, that's not what this country was about. Those men had far greater morals and imagination than we do. And what they saw was a place where people could be free to, if you want to destroy yourself, you're free to destroy yourself, but to be free to pursue the most worthwhile existence, that of eternal happiness. And that is going to mean different things to different people, and we're all pursuing that in some kind of way. Now, if you'd like to go deeper in a study of what it means to pursue eternal happiness, what it means to understand happiness classically, as the founding generation would have understood happiness, feel free to reach out to me. You can go to my Facebook page, Dr. Jeff Kreh. If you go Facebook/Dr. Jeff Kreh. And I've got a program there, a community, a group that you can join, and you can download a little guide. It's called The Great Idea About Great Ideas, and learn about this study in humanities that is so rich and deep and draws us closer to understanding what humans are supposed to be, what humans can be at their best and at their worst, and leave you free to exercise your liberty on which path you choose there. The other thing is you can reach out to me on email. I'm available. It's down in the description below, and I will respond to you. If you've got a question or comment or smart remark that you just want to leave in the comments below, I award 100 Brazilian points to the best question, comment, smart remark that's left. Meantime, I want to encourage you, pursue happiness, not just being happy, but eternal happiness. Pursue that with everything like you're worthwhile and like you're worth something, because you are. Made, created equally, created by whom? Well, that's the great question that the founders all knew the answer to. Created by God in His image. To be equal in eternal happiness, and in that state, that future state, to be counted equal with the highest expression of humanity ever, Jesus Christ. You can have that. And if I can help you in any way, I'd love to. Do leave a comment below. If you like this, hit like, subscribe, what the types of things that everybody says you ought to do. And in the meantime, just know that I'm rooting for you. I hope that you achieve greater and greater happiness, that you can taste that in your life, and that you are aiming for a truly worthwhile eternal existence. And if I can help you in any way, don't hesitate to let me know. I love you.